I'm going to talk in this video, brief video, about how to answer question 3 on the paper 2 AQA GCSE history, and I'm doing the Elizabeth topic here. Question 3 will always have the same question stem, and it will be write an account. And what is the key things to think about in these write an account questions? Well, it's 8 marks, so it's another 10-minute question. And what you're trying to do here is you're trying to tell the story of something, ideally chronologically, so in date order, showing how things changed over time. In this case, you're showing how poverty was dealt with during the reign of Queen Elizabeth, trying to show how the way in which poverty was dealt with changed over time. You're trying to do that in a chronological way. If you can't do that, then at least think about, in this case, well, how did she deal with it, and you'll pick up marks. But ideally, you're showing how things changed over time. So you're thinking about 2, 3 or 4 events and how things move and change over time. So in terms of Queen Elizabeth, and if we're thinking ourselves how poverty was dealt with, well, we'd always want to plan, first of all, and we'd probably be thinking to ourselves that in the earliest part of Elizabethan's reign, mainly poverty or the poor were dealt with as criminals, and they were dealt with in a rather aggressive way. So they could be put in the stocks, or they could be whipped, or even if they were convicted a number of times, they might face execution. So we might say that. We might also go on to say that what happens is that individual towns begin to develop their own approaches to dealing with poverty in the attempt to try to alleviate the problem, because the problem is getting worse and worse during Elizabeth's reign, because of a number of factors. We don't need to go into those so much because it's mainly about how the problem of poverty was dealt with. But we know, don't we, things like enclosure, and there are various economic problems that lead to a rise in poverty. So we know that's true. And then we might want to talk, and we have to really, if we're going to really understand this, we've really got to talk about the 1601 Poor Law, because that happens towards the end of Elizabeth's reign, and that really changes things quite considerably, because it recognises the need to help the so-called deserving poor, whilst at the same time punishing the undeserving. So in some senses that bit hasn't changed, but now there's much more thought about, well, who are the deserving poor and how are we going to help them? And in that case, it was through taxes that were designed to pay for it. So I've got a story here, haven't I? I'm writing the account, I'm telling the story. I'm not going to write the whole thing up, but what I am going to do is just, again, as I've done in other videos, just to show you how I would get this started. So I would say, showing that I know this chronology, and I would say at the start of Elizabeth's reign, the poor were dealt with through punishment. I'd give some examples. As Elizabeth's reign continued, it became evident that the problem of poverty was increasing and more needed to be done. So then I might want to talk about what's happening with the towns. towards the end of reign, the 1601 Poor Law was introduced, which hopefully you can see there how I'm telling the story chronologically and showing the key turning points, and that's what this question is all about. Okay.